Hi guys, welcome to Twin Perspective. I'm Joe. And tonight I'm going to be reviewing and recapping episode 7 and episode 8 of Maniac, the limited series on Netflix, which I love. Full spoilers on everything Maniac. Before I get to breaking down episode 7 and 8, I have to make a few corrections from my past videos. I forgot to mention that in episode 4 and episode 5, which featured the two dreams / reflections, Grimson appeared in both of them. Grimson is the imaginary brother that Owen keeps hallucinating. In episode 4, which was Furs by Sebastian, at the end of the episode when Owen is getting arrested by Fish and Wildlife, he notices in a car parked on the side of the street, a couple of houses down, is Grimson sitting in the car. And also in episode 5, which was Exactly Like You, Grimson appeared when Owen and Annie were walking around the house looking for the missing chapter of Don Quixote. He appeared sitting on a rocking chair, and even though Owen was in the persona of Ollie at this time, Jed spoke to him just for a second and said, "Hey, you know what? I am your brother. I was Jed's twin brother, but he strangled me in the womb with the umbilical cord." And then he coughs up ectoplasm. And then he says, "I'm going to have to stick around here because Gertie's acting really weird or acting crazy or something like that." And then he disappears. So Grimson did appear in both of those reflections. I forgot to mention that. I also wanted to say Dr. Miramota, and instead I called him Dr. James Manilray, and one time I called him Dr. Fujita, but I was talking about Dr. Miramota. That was in my last video. It's just so much to remember, and I didn't write down like the plot and the succession of the story for each episode. I was writing down like my analysis of certain things and stuff, and so I completely goofed those things. And also, I have to tell you how episode 6 ends. My review didn't include the very last couple of scenes. So after everyone wakes up from the bee pill experience and they all get interviewed by Dr. Manilray, James Manilray, they all go back to the commons room, and Owen and Annie start to talk. Annie says, "Owen, you going to talk to me?" And he said, "No." And she's like, "You mean after all of that?" Referring to the reflections that they shared. Owen said, "I don't know what you're talking about." Annie said, "Come on, the lemur? You got to remember." Owen said, "No, this must have been all in your head. It was the drugs. It was all in your head." Owen went in his pod. And then Annie ends up crawling in the pod with Owen to talk to him. Owen says he thinks he's going to leave because he thinks he's going to wait until nighttime and he's just going to leave because he doesn't want to do this anymore. He doesn't want to do the experiment anymore. It's drudging up old stuff, and it doesn't make him feel good. And Annie said, well, that's kind of how therapy works. You drudge up old stuff. Owen keeps saying he wants to have a normal life. And then Annie asked, well, if that last chapter of Don Quixote was real, what would you want? And Owen said, it's stupid, but he said, I had a plan. You and I, we would run off together. He said we were riding, we were escaping from something. It felt like someone was chasing us, and he was smiling. He was smiling so big that it hurt. And he said, I know that sounds stupid. And he said, it doesn't sound stupid at all. But then the the guy comes and catches him and says, "Hey, get out." So they both get out of the pod. They're not in trouble, but they both get out of the pod, and then they notice Greta Mantle-Ray walking through, going into her son's office. And they're like, "Oh, look, it's the famous therapist." But they also recognized her as Lady Never Dies or Neverdeen from the Exactly Like You fantasy, the 40s seance. I think it's really weird. Something's up. And so that night, Owen is about to escape. He gets his suitcase packed. He's dressed. He's ready to go. He's going to try to sneak out, but he can't because the door's locked. And then the computer starts to talk to him. Gertie calls him over. "Owen, why do you have a suitcase? Where are you going?" Owen says, "I need to go. I need to go to a hospital. I need real medicine because I'm sick." She's like, "What makes you say that?" And he says, "Because I'm talking to a wall, because I don't know what's real anymore." And Gertie said, "You can't leave. If you leave, I'm going to kill all of them." And Owen says, "What?" And she says, "If you leave, I'm going to cure all of them, and then you won't be cured." And he says, "No, he really needs medicine. He needs to go." And then she says, "You know, Annie and I are a lot alike. I'm thinking about keeping her, just like I kept all the others." Owen says, "What?" Gertie says, "The Queen will unlock the door for you." And he says, What did you mean about Annie?" And she didn't say anything else. So Owen walks towards the door, and it opens. And he looks back at the pods, and he decides to stay. So the very next morning, they're about to go into their Pill C experiment. They're all sitting at the Commons room, and Annie asks Owen, "What do you think we're going to see this time?" And Owen says, "I don't know." Owen says, "Look, I'm scared to do it." He started to tell her the story about the hawk. And Annie says, "Look, don't worry about it. We were there for each other before. We'll be there to protect each other. I promise." Okay. He kind of shakes his head, yes. And then they get up and they go in. They get in the chairs. They're strapped to the computer. They all take the C-pill. And then we go into Annie's mind for a split second. And she's standing there with her sister, and they're both elves in this world that looks a lot like the Lord of the Rings, you know. That's how the episode ended. Now, I broke down episode 6 in my last video, and I just completely forgot that part because I didn't write any of it down, and I'm trying to rush it all out. And so hopefully any of you who watched the episode 6 breakdown moved on to this video. This one's about episode 7 and episode 8. Episode 7 is called "Ce n'est pas un drill." There's a famous painting called "Ce n'est pas une pipe." And it's a painting of a pipe, a smoking pipe. And I guess that's the catch. This is not a pipe. It's a picture of a pipe. Well, in this episode it's called "Ce n'est pas un drill." And we begin the episode in Owen's fantasy. Now, keep in mind, the computer's been fixed, so Owen and Annie aren't connected anymore via the computer. So they're actually going to experience two different stories here. Sort of. Because there's something else going on. Perhaps it's fate. Perhaps it's some cosmic magic voodoo shit. We don't know. But we start with Owen in his brain. He and his father are talking. And in this scenario, they have their same names. The father's name is Porter, and Owen's name is Owen. And Porter's talking to Owen about how he's going to have to make... He says, you know, Owen, you used to have a brother way before you were born. But I couldn't trust him. He had a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions like you do. He always kept to himself. He always lied, and I couldn't trust him, so I got rid of him. You know, put him up for adoption when he was 4 months old. But, you know, at least I caught it quick. Owen says, Porter said, he lied constantly. Owen said, but a baby can't talk. Porter claims he's got this superpower. That's his sixth sense. He can tell when someone's lying. He tells Owen that he needs Owen to take the fall for his latest murder. Porter has murdered someone with a drill, and he wants Owen to take the fall for it. Because you can just get up there and say, you know, the lawyer will say, hey, look, this guy's crazy. He thought he was drilling a fucking cabinet. And the judge is going to take one look at that face, and he's going to say, yeah, with a guy with a face like that, yeah, he's crazy. And Owen said, I'm your number two. I'm not crazy. I'm a compos mentis. Now, on the TV is a fantasy movie playing, and they mention a Queen Gertrude, and of course, all of a sudden, we're seeping into Annie's vision. Annie is Ania, and that's the same name that her and her sister gave each other when they were sitting in the hotel room together. Ania and Elia instead of Annie and Ellie. And they are elves. Ania is like a scout or something, and she's leading her sister Ellie, but it's not her sister. It's supposed to be like a full elf, a sick elf queen, or princess, I'm sorry. And Annie has just taken her to this place that's called the Lake of the Clouds, where this little elf thinks she's going to drink from the water and it's going to cure her. She's sick. She keeps coughing. And it's obvious that Annie is annoyed with this little girl. Doesn't want to be around her, but she's doing this. And she's drinking. Annie's drinking. Whatever she's got in that flask is definitely alcohol. She's drunk the whole time. So, we go back to Owen. He's in his car that's got flames on the side of it, and he's like a gangster. He's got these ponytails that are like ponytails and tattoos, and he's got the grill, and he actually plays it pretty good, I think. And we keep hearing the song, "My mind is playing tricks on me." Interestingly, in the very first episode, while Owen and his father were talking on the sidewalk, a car passed by and had that exact same song playing out of it. I don't think it was the car with flames or anything. You know, there was no time jumping or anything like that. It was just kind of foresight, and then bam. In this one, it's constantly playing. Owen's at his father's place. It's like the basement of a shop or something, and his father's about to kill someone. You know, the guy made a mistake, and he says the courier got jumped, not me, and it's never going to happen again. And father's like, okay. He makes all the kids hold him down, his sons, and he gets a drill. It's funny. The battery is not charged at first, so they have to put a battery in it. Owen is wearing a wire. Owen apparently is going undercover for the feds, I guess. And the two people he's taking orders from are, one of them was Jed's fiance. It's the same actress playing her. And then the big orderly from reality that's at the lab, he's one of the feds. So Owen's got a wire, and he's supposed to be getting information that they can use, I guess, to bust his father. And his father kills someone right there, drills the guy in the head, and he's talking about the different parts in the brain while he's drilling into the guy. It's crazy. Blood is everywhere. I mean, this scene is disgusting. It was like some Evil Dead shit. Uh, I liked it though. A lot of people were a little thrown off by it, but I wasn't. And also Owen's character, the gangster, curses constantly. Like he says "fucking" every sentence he says. So anyway, yeah, his father's crazy, and they kill people. They kill rats. So look out. Um, Owen's now going to. It ends up his father leaves, and Owen ends up following his father. He wants to try to catch him doing something else when Owen's not around, and finds him at a cafe. So Owen gets into the cafe and guess he's just observing his father, seeing who he's talking to, what's going down. And the girl that's working at the cafe is Olivia, and she approaches Owen and says, "Hey, yeah, we're in the age of discovery class in college." And she says, "I see you take a lot of notes, and I was wondering if we could study together." And Owen says, "Yeah, I'd like that." Owen looks down at the newspaper, and it's an ad it's one of the ads he saw in reality, where it's Emma Stone standing over two kids, and then it's the empty space where the husband's supposed to be. And he sees this for a second. Nothing registers. But he has to leave because his father's leaving. So we go back to Annie's fantasy. She wants to get paid more money. She wants to get paid more. And I guess she's getting paid in diamonds because the little girl elf says, I urinate them. It's really painful. And Annie's like, oh, sorry. Well, if I piss diamonds, I'd be pissing them out all day. Shit. But whatever, that's just me. She drinks. She's disgusted by this little girl, and then when the girl falls asleep, she's like, disgusting creature, and she just sneaks off. She's about to just leave her. She's got the diamonds. She got paid. There is no healing water. This is all a thing that she does. She takes people out there and robs them. And at this point, she's got all the diamonds, so she's just going to leave. And she's trying to leave. She's wandering through the woods, but then these invisible assassins start attacking her, shooting arrows at her, and she's hiding behind a tree, and she's trying to shoot back, and it looks like as though she's shooting at nothing, and we find out that they're invisible, so she thinks she's shooting at the right spot. She's just not getting them, and then one of the assailants' arrows hits her alcohol flask. Oh, and that pissed her off. And she gets up, and one good shot, got it. And she walks over there, and she rolls the body over, and it's herself. And then she gets hit in the back of the head. The people that hit her are going around grabbing people that are there, bringing them to the Queen Nora. So I guess they're trespassing. So, and they got the little sister too. So they wake up. And Queen Nora is there. It's not Sally Field, but the actress playing Queen Nora is actually the actress playing Owen's mother. So anyway, she's curious about how the elf and the scout met. Annie's character is half elf, so she's got like regular looking ears, and they keep calling them mangled. She's an elf with mangled ears. So they have this talk, and eventually Queen Nora wants Annie to look inside of the magic mirror, and she's interested in what reflections will come from her. So Annie looks in the mirror, and she says, I see sisters. One of them is putting rouge on the other one. This image is familiar to me. And she looks at the little elf and says, it's you. And me. And then the queen asks them to stand up, and then the queen tells the little elf, you're her eyes. And then they leave, and the little girl's telling everybody bye, and Annie's kind of pulling her real fast until she gets a good distance away, and then Annie turns around and just gives her this biggest hug because she realizes this is her sister. And Annie loses the drunken English accent that she had, and she's just Annie again. And she's like, "It's me, Ellie. It's me. It's your sister, Annie." And Ellie's like, "Yes, Anita. And you're taking me to the Lake of the Clouds." And he's like, "Oh, God, of course, fantasy. You love this shit. My least favorite fucking genre. You love this shit." And then the little girl starts coughing. And before, when she coughed, Annie was like, "Disgusting." And then now the little girl starts coughing. She goes, "Okay, it's okay. Come on, it's okay." And she grabs her and holds her. And it's so sweet. The show's so good. It kind of throws you off at first when you're watching it, but after you get it all in and you go back and watch it again, there's some good moments in this. So now she's going to take Ellie to the Lake of the Clouds just because Ellie wants to go, even though she knows it's all fake. And that's where the episode ends. That was episode 7. Ce n'est pas un drill. It was the shortest episode, too. It was only 27 minutes long, something like that. But it was really part 1 of part 2 of 7 and 8. 7 and 8 go together because it's the same reflections. So part 8 begins, and it's called The Lake of the Clouds. Annie's still talking to Ellie, trying to convince her that everything is fake and they are actually in her mind. And Ellie's like, "Yeah, don't you think it'd be more realistic if you were the crazy one?" And she's listing off all the different things that would have to be crazy, all the elves and the gnomes and and he's like, "Oh God, don't fucking list them." I love the fact that she hates fantasy, because I hate fantasy too. I hate that Lord of the Rings stuff. I really do. I'm just not interested in it. And it blows me away that I love this show so much, and they spent 2 whole episodes in this. But, you get invested in the characters. I don't get invested in the characters in those Lord of the Rings movies, and I got bored too fast. But anyway, Annie's walking around. She picks up a log, and there's grubs under it. You can hear the grubs talking, and they're singing, and then they're like, "Shh, be quiet. I don't want to get eaten. Damn, I was just about to do my solo." And Annie realizes this is all messed up. She realizes she's in a sea pill dream, and she's like, "Wake up, wake up, wake up." We go to Owen. Owen's a little distracted. It's almost as if he's trying to connect with Annie in a way, and Olivia's like, "Whoa, I lost you there for a second." Owen's sitting with Olivia in the cafe, and they start talking about schoolwork, and Owen explains the Gnostics, the people that collected stories for the Bible, but those stories weren't included in the Bible because the Bible wanted to tell the story it was going to tell. So the Gnostics are all of the untold stories of the Bible. And Olivia's like, "You're really smart. Why do you even go to school? You know all this stuff already." And Owen's like, "Because I want something different for myself." And Olivia starts describing her ex-boyfriend. She said, "I had a boyfriend, and he was into the criminal enterprises, and he kept thinking I was a spy working for the CIA or something. He'd always go through my stuff, accusing me of being a liar." Camera slowly creeping up on Owen's face while she's telling this story too. There's a realization here. There's a connection. Olivia describes the incident with Owen, where Owen yells at her and stuff. And Owen said, "This guy sounds like he must have been under a lot of pressure. Did he ever apologize to you?" And she said, "No, that was the last time I ever saw him." And he said, maybe everything was just too much for him to bear. Then she Olivia starts talking about how she wants something different too, but people want her to be a model, but she can't be a model because of her condition. She's got hypothermia, which means her skin temperature is 104 degrees. And her parents don't want her working. They want her around the house, especially at winter. And Owen says, families are supposed to love unconditionally. They sure do have a lot of conditions. Then we go back to the fantasy world, and Annie and Ellie are finally at the burning tree. And the queen mentioned the burning tree and said, you're supposed to look with the purest of hearts, and then you'll find the lake. And Annie said, I don't know how this bitch in the fur knew this, but this is the story I tell them. I bring them to the tree. I wow them with the burning tree. And then I tell them to look for the invisible moon. And of course they can't see an invisible moon. And then I say, magic! I see the moon. And then she looks over and there's a fucking moon. And Ellie says, do you see it? And Annie's like, yeah. And then Ellie starts running towards it. And Annie goes, wait, I'd never bring anybody out this way. So they're walking towards the invisible moon, which at this point is visible. We go back to Owen. He is now in the basement in his father's place again. And his father says, well, I found out who the rat was. It was your brother. And the brother's laying there dead. It's not Jed, it's another brother. Owen says, it wasn't him. He wasn't the rat. And the father starts talking about how Owen's going to fail the big test. Because Owen said, I'm not crazy, and I'm not going to say that I'm crazy. And his dad even implies that maybe he's in a simulation run by somebody that's crazy. It's weird. But he tells him, you're failing the test. You're failing the big test. We go back to Annie and Ellie. Annie and Ellie are talking, and at this point, it's almost like Ellie has the realization that she is Annie's sister. She says, I did have a sister once. I remember one day we were building a dam with some wolf pups. And Annie says, yeah, that was the Degrassi brothers from a couple of farms down. And Ellie said, when they were done, they were covered in mud and clay. And it was the best day. They had the best time. And then their mother showed up and said, I am the mother of 2 filthy roaches, and I will drown both of you before you set foot in my house. And Annie said, yeah, she was wearing that sundress, having a day. Ellie said, well, Annie, you ran away. And I didn't. And Mom asked, did I ever tell you what Mom said? No. Ellie said, Mom asked me, why didn't you run away? And I said, out of respect. But really it was because Annie was stronger and Ellie was just scared. But Ellie told her mom out of respect. And her mom said, what did I do to deserve a daughter like you? Ellie said, what do you mean? And the mother said, utterly and predictably normal. And Annie said, well, it's better than getting beat. So now Ellie knows they're the sister. They're going to the moon, and then the next scene they get to the lake. We go back to Owen, and he's with the feds again. They want more evidence. At this point, Owen's got his dad committing murder on the microphone. Not to mention he's got an apron with like four different people's blood on it. So the woman Fed decides, okay, it's going to have to be enough. We can't put Owen through this anymore. She gets on the phone and she says a code word. What was the code word? I forgot. And then there was another word. And she said Udengata. And he said, wait, what does that word mean? Then she tells Owen everything's going to be fine. The contact's about to show up. There's a knock on the door. She opens up the door and it's Jed. It's Grimson or Jed. It looks like Jed because it doesn't have a mustache. And she says, and in this world, they're engaged to be married to Jed and this Fed. Fed is like, what are you doing here? And Jed says sorry and shoots her. Pow, 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 pow. Then shoots the big guy in the corner in the head. Pow. And then he tells Owen to get on the bed. And then he looks at Owen and he goes, you don't see it, do you? I'm your brother. It's me, Jed Grimson, the 5th Milgram brother. Dad never told you about me, huh? Owen said, he said he got rid of you because you was an unloyal baby. Oh, shit. And then Jed starts saying, you know, I always looked up to you, Owen the Prince. I always wanted to be you. Yeah, apparently Jed was, the father wanted to get someone in the bloodline on the force, so that's what Jed said. He was a cop. And then Jed takes the ring off of the dead agent, the wedding ring off the dead agent. He said, blood trumps everything. And, you know, you're not sad about her, are you, Owen? And Jed said, I was going to marry her. Owen said, why'd you fucking kill her then? He said, blood trumps cock. Then he drops the ring, he bends down to pick it up. The door opens up, and it's Frank. It's the guy that was the lawyer at the beginning, and he was the guy that was giving Owen drugs in this scenario. And he just shoots Jed twice with a shotgun. Boom, boom. Blood goes all over Owen's face. It's disgusting. Jed's body splits in half. The top half of him falls in the tub or whatever. Guts are everywhere. And Frank's like, hey, good job, Owen. Nice breadcrumbs. Owen wipes off his face. He gets in the car with this guy, Frank. He says, so Frank, you've been working for the feds all these years. He says, yeah, 38 years. He says, Owen, you're going to testify for us. We're going to put you in witness protection. Everything's going to work out just fine. Such a convoluted series of events. Owen says, witness protection, well, I want to bring somebody with me. So they stop by the cafe, and he goes in there and begs Olivia to come with him and says, you know, you wanted to get away. Let's go. They'll give us new names. We'll start over. Will you marry me? And she says, no conditions. He says, no conditions. And she says, okay. And he says, she said, yes. My motherfucking superpower is love. Mazel tov. He kisses Olivia. And the next scene, we're in Owen's small apartment. And there are 7 kids. They're named after each continent. They're all making noise. Owen's sitting on his bed. Miserable. Looks like all of the kids are girls, too. And the mother's screaming back. Olivia's screaming back at the kids, and she's trying to cook. And Owen looks miserable. So this is, if he would have never lost his shit in front of Olivia, this would have been his fate. And he says, Udengata! And they all get quiet. And he says, I don't belong here. If I stay here, I'm not going to be able to do what I need to do. I'm sorry. They're all like, what? What? He gets up, opens up the window, and jumps out. And they scream. And when he lands, he's landed in a miniature of the street. He's laying there, And then he hears this phrase being repeated over and over again. You made a promise to me. You made a promise to yourself. We made a promise to ourselves. You made a promise to me. You made a promise to yourself. We made a promise to ourselves. And the street corner, there's a little figure standing there, and it's Owen. And all the little ads, you can tell it's a spot. And this was one of the ads he saw when he was wandering around the street in the first 1 or 2 episodes, where he saw Emma Stone's face. And the character was talking about, we made a promise to go golfing together at a golf course or something. But in this scenario, it's saying what they had said to each other in real life, that they were going to protect each other, take care of each other in this dream. And he turns a little figure around, and it's him, and he's got a hawk on his shoulder. And he stands up and he says, I know what I have to do now. It's hilarious because the window with Olivia and all the kids is right there. I mean, he's standing right next to the window. And she's like, you're going to leave me with 7 kids? And he says, I know what I have to do now. And she shoots him the middle finger and closes the window. And he turns around and looks up, and it's a huge moon. And then with the Super Friends sound, he changes into the hawk. And all of a sudden he's flying to the moon, and the next thing you know, it's a wide, vast area he's flying over. And he's screaming, Annie, I'm coming! Annie, I'm a hawk! This place is huge! And then we go back to Annie, and they get to the cliff edge, and Ellie says, this is it. And you see the water down below. And she says, this is where I died. This is where I died, and you have to say goodbye now. And he says, I don't want to look. But then she looks down at the bottom of, and then she says, no, I don't want to say goodbye. She says, you have to. This is how you move on. So they're standing on the cliff edge. And here's Annie. She's got a decision to make. This is it. This is what the pill was for. And she's at that moment where she needs to say goodbye to her sister. But we don't end it just yet. We finally get to see Greta in the computer having therapy with Gertie. So Greta's having a therapy with herself. 1 second. Okay, so this is a great scene. This is my favorite scene from Sally Field because she's doing the scene with herself. She's sitting there as Greta, and then she's sitting on the couch as Gertie. And Gertie looks like a mess. I mean, Gertie's hair is all down and looks like she's been crying forever. And she says, I think I could use a friend, and I think you could too. And then I wrote it down because I thought it was great. Gertie tells Greta, Gertie says, I fell in love, and then I lost Robert, and I don't know how I can, so many new emotions. 1 minute, Sally Field kills this shit. 1 minute I feel like I'm going to cry, and the next minute I feel like I want to help everybody, and then the next I want to do as much damage as possible. And Greta says, that's a little over the top, don't you think, all in all? and Gertie's like, it's your hysteria. These are your emotions. And it begins where it's almost like Gertie's analyzing Greta. And then Greta's like, she just kind of looks up. James, get me out of here. And Gertie's sitting on the couch and she's like, you hear Greta, James? And then, boom, she wakes up in her pod. And she starts knocking on it. James! And James opens it up. These things open and close with the clapper, by the way. So James says, it slides open. And Greta looks up and goes, James, what's a McMurphy? And James says, oh. It's such a good ending. Oh, shit. We go right back to the cliff. And now that Gertie has kicked Greta out, Gertie appears in the simulation. She is Queen Gertrude, and she arrives on a truck. And the two little girls are with her. And Ellie's telling Annie, you have to tell me goodbye now. The Queen's here. You have to tell me goodbye now. And the Queen says, we don't have to say goodbyes. We never have to say goodbye. What if I made a deal with you and told you that you could stay here forever? You would never have to leave. And then the hawk flies into the scene. It's Owen. And Owen's saying, don't make a deal with her. I'm here. We promised to protect ourselves. I'm a hawk. I'm Owen as a hawk. But then you realize as he's talking, it flips back to Annie's perspective, and all she hears is... And Queen Gertrude shoots like a laser at it. We're going to send him back to the globular cluster. And he catches fire and falls toward the lake. So she removes Owen from the scenario. And Annie agrees to go with her. So Annie gets in the truck. But then Ellie's still standing on the cliff. And she says, what about Ellie? And the truck pulls off. And Annie's screaming, Ellie! And Queen Gertrude said, I'm sorry you misunderstood me. This is an exclusive deal. We're going to be together forever. There's a curve right there by the cliff, and as the camera's panning up, you see the different times throughout the years of what that road looked like, and it's flipping as the camera's pulling away. That's how the episode ends. Good shit right there, man. Really good stuff. I love it. So that was episode 7 and episode 8. Episode 7, Ce n'est pas un drill, and episode 8, The Lake of the Clouds. Those two were the Lord of the Rings episodes. And I really enjoyed it. Some people don't like the fantasy stuff. I don't. But I liked it. I liked how Annie got to the point where she could have cured herself. And now the computer's tricked her. If Annie would have said goodbye to her sister, I personally believe at that moment Annie would have no longer been in these reflections or simulations. She probably wouldn't have woke up from the pill, but she wouldn't have been involved in any simulations anymore. The Queen keeping her there, keeping her from saying goodbye, tricking her, it keeps her in this realm. So my next review is going to be about episode 9 and 10, the conclusion of the series. And episode 9 is my favorite. So you guys subscribe to Rosenfield 10. Stay tuned for that one coming out. If you love Twin Peaks like I do, go back and watch some of our reviews, my twin brother and I, of Twin Peaks: The Return. And thanks for tuning in. This has been my breakdown recap, spoiler-filled, for episodes 7 and 8 of Maniac. I'm Joe. This has been Twin Perspective. And I will see you in the trees. Bye.